And you have to trust that everything's happening exactly the way it needs to, that you have to trust something, karma, your gut, whatever, to know that everything's happening and unfolding perfectly. The challenge we have is that we give meaning to every instance. And I can look back after 62 trips around the sun and say there were so many times when I thought that the world was going to come down on me, that everything that was happening was horrific. And I can look back decades later and say, that was one of the best moments in my life.
This is By Joy Joanne Season 2. I'm your host, Joanne Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Joining us today is a speaker, author, and purpose-driven coach best known for his new book, The Joy Molecule. After a decades-long entrepreneurial journey, including a life-changing trip to Africa, he now helps high achievers redefine success, reconnect with who they truly are, and create lives filled with meaning, connection, and joy. Through his frameworks around identity, purpose, and conscious connection, he guides people to shift from what they do to why they are here. It brings deep wisdom, powerful stories, and a grounded human approach to transformation. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming the chief connector and the author of The Joy Molecule, Larry Kesslin. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Hi, Joanne. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to see where this conversation leads. And thank you very much for having me as a guest on your show.
The pleasure is mine. It's such a joy to have you on the show since we are all about, joy and happiness. So let's start with your story. In the bio, and while I was doing my research, your life changed during a trip to Africa in 2012. So I really have to know, what did you witness there? What happened that challenged everything you believe about success and happiness?
Well, it starts actually earlier than that. In 1993, I was working at the General Electric Company, which is the largest, at that point, largest company in the world. CEO was Jack Welch. And I was in engineering. I was an engineer, but I was in a sales job. And I went to Colorado in the States, to Aspen. And I brought a dozen young men from the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which is where I was living at the time. And I brought them there, and we met with about 70 plus other young people from across the country. So some from LA, some from New Orleans, some from Phoenix, some from Denver. And it was a week-long program teaching these young men to ski. And when it was over, I was like, that Friday night, the last night when they were finished skiing, they're all in this gymnasium. And I'm standing in this hallway, and I could actually see my breath. It was really pretty cold. And I'm watching these kids, and they're having a blast. And I was 29 years old, working for the number one company in the world. And I was not very happy. And I realized that if I'm not happy, and these kids who have next to nothing compared to what I've grown up with and what I have right now, if I'm not happy, there's something wrong. So I came back two days later. I went to work after I got home, and I called my boss that night. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. He said, you can't do what? I said, I can't work at a company like this anymore. I need to go on my own. He's like, what are you going to do? I said, I have no idea, but not this. And that was 32 and a half years ago. And ever since then, I've been self-employed. I've spent a lot of money. I've taken a lot of risk. I've tried a lot of things. I've made a bunch of money. I raised 2 kids, got married, traveled the world. I've been to so many places. It's been amazing. But the trip we took to Africa changed everything for me, because the same thing happened to me in Africa that happened in Colorado in 1993, is I met all these people that had so much less than I did, that were so much happier than I was. So I landed in Entebbe. We spent about 3.5 weeks, almost 24, 25 days in Uganda and Kenya. And I would say in the big cities, Nairobi and Kampala, it was no different than what you would experience in Singapore or in the United States or any major city. And what I experienced in the rural villages, though, was totally different. So we went to a small village north of Kampala called Jinja. That was beautiful. And then we went to a town called Bali, Mbale. There's a Jewish community outside of Bali called the Abayadaya in Uganda. That happens to be 1,500 people that are Jewish. I happen to be Jewish. And 500 of them live in this one community. And the reason I went to Uganda in the first place was to bring computers to rural villages in eastern and northern Uganda. The organization I was working with already had set up 5 computer centers to teach young people how to access the greatest library in the world, the internet. And the community we went to did not have a computer center yet. And we had shipped over 150 computers from a biotech here in San Diego that was donating the computers. And we ended up setting up a lab at this community in eastern Uganda. And what I saw there were people that were, I mean, we went for a walk when we first got to the community in Bali. Now you got to understand that when you'd ride on these roads, I don't even know if you can call them roads back when we were there, but all dirt paths, the cars bouncing back and forth. They call it an African massage because you're just all over the place. And we get to this village and we go walk about a half a mile down to the school. And the elementary school is these 3 or 4 white buildings with all these painted like exercises on the walls. And what we found out later is that they have no textbooks. So all the learning is painted on the school walls. And we saw this young woman down there. She couldn't have been more than 18 or 19 years old. And she had a big pot of water on her head. And she had 3 little kids. And the kids were just so happy and they were running around. And she was just so joyous to be alive. And then everybody we met, everybody, dozens and dozens of people, were all just filled with joy. And it didn't compute to me because I was going there to fix them because they didn't have all the things that we had. And what I realized, I mean, it took me a while. So we go to Bali, then we go to Gulu, which is in northern Uganda, and the same thing. People working really hard, doing beautiful things. And it was just a disconnect for me. How can these people be so happy? How can they have so much joy? And I came home. So we flew from Nairobi to Cairo to New York. And I'm sitting in the airport in New York after 30 hours on an airplane saying, what did I just experience? And I was like, I defined success for myself at 28. And that definition was the ability to do what I want whenever I wanted to do it. And this is now 20 years later. I'm 48. And I was successful based on my definition. But I wasn't nearly as happy as the people I met. So I'm sitting there saying, you know what? I'm done with success. I need to be significant. So I go on this whole significance journey. I'd already read Halftime by Bob Buford before I went. I learned about Second Mountain, which is a book by David Brooks, all about first mountain's accumulation, second mountain's about giving back. And I said, okay, time to be done with success, time to be significant. And then 2014, I did a TEDx talk about the disconnected, connected world. And I started to put all these pieces together. But the piece that kind of pushed me over the edge was a conference I went to about 7 weeks after I got back from Mexico, or I got back from Africa. And I went to this conference in Mexico, 400 people trying to solve world poverty. Conference is called Opportunity Collaboration. It still goes on today. 400-ish people, no speakers. It's called an unconference. The only speakers are the attendees. And I went for the first time and they asked me 3 questions. Now think about it. I just got back from Africa. I went to Africa to fix them, to make them feel better, to bring my technology to change their life. And the first 3 questions I'm asked at this workshop is, what is poverty? Who gets to define it? And why are we trying to fix it? And my mind kind of exploded. I'm like, okay, what did I see? Did I see poverty? Or did I just see people that were impoverished? Because to me, poverty is lifelessness and not having. And I started to rethink, and then who gets to define it? Why do Americans get to define poverty? And then I think the only reason we try and fix it, that I've come to, is that we want other people around the world to look like us. so that we can feel better about the disconnected, non-human culture we've created here. Because that's what I've learned over the last 13 years, is that I started on this journey to figure out, why am I here? I have a 25-year-old daughter who's starting to ask those questions now at 25. And I'm so excited for her at 25 to be asking the question is, Dad, why am I really here? I didn't ask that question until my 50s. And I still didn't get an answer until my 60s. I'm 62 and a half now. And I have learned a lot. And I still know nothing. And the more I learn, I realize I know nothing. I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of beliefs. But even my beliefs, I'm not sure they're true. So this idea of joy, the people that I met, I tried to figure out what they had. And what I think they had is what the Harvard study on happiness has shown over 85 years. 10 years ago, the Harvard study, which was about longevity, studied 400 plus Harvard graduates and 400 plus Bostonians that didn't go to Harvard. And by the age of 50, they can tell whether people will be happy at 80 based on one single criteria. And that one single criteria is the quality of their relationships. So if you can tell at 50 whether somebody's going to be happy at 80 based on the quality of their relationships, why don't we teach relationship development? And what I saw in Africa were communities connected to each other, connected to the land, connected to their ancestors. I mean, there was no Google to get answers. So if you wanted answers, you had to talk to your elders. And the elders were still included. My parents are 94 and 91. They lived in a retirement community for the last 35 years, and now they're in a retirement home, fully independent, doing great. But we put them off to pasture. They didn't grow up with their grandkids every day, although they can talk to them on Zoom or any type of phone they want to, but it's not the same as being in the same household or in the same neighborhood. And the United States have perpetuated, and I'm part of it, is this rugged individualism. And I believe that what I experienced in Africa was a sense of human connection that I never experienced here in the US. And I think the reason that they're happy, the reason they're filled with joy, is they're deeply connected. And what I've come to in the United States is the people that I see based on my definition of joy. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you need to adopt my definition of joy. I wrote a book to define joy for myself because I didn't grow up with joy. I've had to seek it my entire life. I grew up in a household, middle income, United States, white kid from New Jersey, not a bad life. But my parents were stressed. My dad was broke when I was 10, like really broke. We had to borrow money from other family members for a good 5 to 7 years before my dad got healthy financially again. And that was stressful for me as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old. And there was a lot of stress in our household. So joy was not this thing that was floating around in my life. So I've had to seek it as an adult. And that trip to Africa kind of showed me that there were people that were infinitely happier. Now, the book I wrote is 8 stories of people I've met since 2012 and the lessons they've taught me. And there's a young man I met on that trip. His name is Armstrong. And Armstrong needed $1,000 to go take a pilot's test. And when I got to Africa, Turkish Airlines decided to leave my bags back in Istanbul, and they didn't get them to me for 6 days. The airline ended up giving me over $1,000 in cash to satisfy anything I needed to buy. The people that I was staying with had clothes for myself and my kids, so I didn't need to really buy anything. And we had an extra $1,000 that I was just handed by an airline. And here's this kid, Armstrong. If you're an American, Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon pilot. And here's a kid who wants to become a pilot. And I just got handed $1,000 from an airline. So I gave the kid $1,000. I found out a couple of years later, the most money he'd ever seen in his life was $300. So here's a white man, a Mzunga in Africa, handing somebody $1,000. And that opportunity changed my life and changed his. He now lives in the United States. I've invested a lot of money in him. I've raised a lot of money with him. And now he's looking to start a company to do work binationally between Africa and the United States, helping move parts back and forth. Airline parts, just different parts. He loves an airplane. He's more mechanic and airframe inspection than he is an actual pilot. But he just loves the whole idea of aviation. So that whole experience, Joyanne, has just taught me that what we chase here in the United States, and maybe Singapore is similar because I've been there, is especially now, 25 years later, I'm sure is a lot of consumption. Singapore is a big money city and port, and everything's coming in. And we teach people to find joy with external issues. How do I find the right house or buy the right car or find the right beautiful spouse? And if I do those things, I'll be happy and I'll be joyful. And the truth is that's not where it lives. And that's what I learned in Africa. Is I learned that circumstance does not define your joy. What I also learned, and I talk about in the book, is my work needs to matter. My work when I went to Africa was helping some really smart business people make more money. 20% of them really cared about their communities, and half of them didn't care at all. And there were like 30% in the middle. And all I wanted to do was work with those 15 to 20% that really cared. Those are the people I met at Opportunity Collaboration in Mexico. And I decided to redesign my life. So in 2014, after 2.5 years after getting back from Africa, I literally shut down a $3 million consulting business to go figure out how to find myself and how to go figure out how to be joyful, because I was not. I was wealthy compared to most people in the world. And I had all the toys. I had a Wave Runner and I had a Jeep and I had a house with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and I had 2 beautiful kids, and we traveled whenever we want to, wherever we want to. I mean, frick, we spent a month in Africa. It was a beautiful thing. But when you watch people that are happier than you that have next to nothing, you start to question, what is it that we're really here for? And that's been the journey. And I think I've come to some conclusions.
But do you agree that since you were successful, you were wealthy, you make a lot of money, but you were not happy? And we all know that so many successful people today, they are not like wealthy, successful, and they are not happy. Like they feel empty inside. So do you agree that success and happiness like can coexist? Like, is it even possible that you can be happy and successful and wealthy,
Oh, no question.
right?
No question. You can be successful and extremely happy and extremely joyful. They're not mutually exclusive at all. The challenge is that what most people define as success. So my book before The Joy Molecule is called Success Redefined. Because I think the challenge is, well, how do we define success? So for me, my original definition was the ability to do what I want whenever I want to do it. My new definition is to do what I want whenever I want to do it while being part of something greater than myself. If I don't include being of service, if I don't include philanthropy, of giving my time, giving my talent, and sometimes giving my treasure, but more time and talent, then the title of my book, The Joy Molecule, came from this idea in that book, The Success Redefined, is conscious connection plus purpose equals joy. And my writer said, oh, conscious connection plus purpose, that's C2P. And if H2O is the water molecule, C2P must be the joy molecule. I'm like, that's really cute. Joyanne, that was 10 years ago. I never did anything with it. It was 10 years between the time somebody gave me the name and the time I actually used it in another book. And I've been germinating. I feel like I've been a caterpillar spinning a cocoon for the last decade, trying to figure out what I am. I always had a really clear vision of who I was. I had a really clear vision of my values and how I show up in the world. And I have a very clear reason on my why. I am here to connect people to themselves. I connect people to each other, and I connect them to the resources they need to leave this planet better than they found it. That is my why. I'm all about social impact. I'm all about human connection. That is why this being was created. But the what was always my struggle, because since I built a successful business, I wanted to rebuild another successful business. But what I've realized over the last year specifically is that the reason I was able to build a good business is because I'm a really good coach. And I'm not your typical coach that asks lots of questions. I'm more of a coach who's just present with what is. And I let the world channel through me. And I tell people what I feel and see. And I ask them lots of questions as to break down their belief system. Because I think that's what causes us the most pain. So my perfect clients these days are actually high net worth individuals that are successful and not happy. And especially if they're smart. Because if they're smart, I can teach them that their belief system is all made up. and I can help them reconstruct it, and I can help them learn to not be attached to outcomes. Because at the end of the day, Michael Singer is my favorite author right now. He wrote The Untethered Soul, Surrender Experiment, and Living Untethered. And his favorite line that I listen to and can repeat every day, all day, is the world is unfolding perfectly, Joyanne. It is perfect. It's been here for billions of years. The only problem is it's not meeting our expectations. And we make meaning out of so many things. What I've learned on my journey is that I am a being that has a mind and has a body. And for most of my life, I thought I was my mind. And even when I intellectually started to play with that concept, my mind told me that it understood, but it never did. And there are moments in my life where I got clarity as to I have a spirit, and that spirit has access to my mind, and I can decide what to do with those thoughts. I can decide to do with the feelings. And the analogy I use is that my being, is the sky. My thoughts are the clouds, and my feelings are the weather. And when I really think about I am not the clouds. I am not my thoughts. I have thoughts, and some of them are dense, and some of them are light, and some of them move quickly, and some of them linger, just like clouds do. And sometimes the weather's bad, and sometimes the weather's beautiful. But at the end of the day, those are just things that I have access to. And for most of my life, I believed I was those things. Been through a lot of workshops, been through a lot of personal development work. And I think that's why we're here, is to figure out why we're here.
So how can we start to discover what we truly are, who we truly are, and why we are here?
Stop looking outside yourself and start looking inside. The busy mind is the part that causes the most pain, in my opinion. The more you think, and the more you try and solve solutions through thought versus being. So I'll tell you some things about my being. My being is 100% love. I know nothing other than love. My being is 100% abundant. My being is grateful, is gratitude. I don't need a list. I don't need to tell my brain that I'm grateful. My being is grateful, and my being is neutral, 100% neutral, has no meaning. My mind creates meaning. My mind creates good and bad. My mind says all these things. There's a great fable about a farmer who has this beautiful stallion, and one day the stallion runs away. And the neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your stallion ran away." He says, "Maybe." The next day the stallion comes back with 6 wild mustangs. Neighbor comes over and says, "Oh my God, you're so lucky. Your horse came back and he brought friends." And the farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, one of his sons went out to try and tame one of the wild mustangs. Got thrown off the horse and broke his leg. The neighbor comes over and says, "I'm so sorry that your son broke his leg." And he's like, "Maybe." The next day, the army comes through town recruiting young people to go to war where most of the young men were going to die. And they couldn't recruit his son because he had a broken leg. You get the idea that no matter what is happening, my company's called 5 Dots. And the reason it's called 5 Dots is because Steve Jobs, at a commencement speech at Stanford in 2005, gave a speech. And in that speech, he talked about you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And you have to trust that everything's happening exactly the way it needs to. That you have to trust something, karma, your gut, whatever, to know that everything's happening and unfolding perfectly. The challenge we have is that we give meaning to every instance. And I can look back after 62 trips around the sun and say there were so many times when I thought that the world was going to come down on me, that everything that was happening was horrific. And I can look back decades later and say, that was one of the best moments of my life. So if in the moment it feels like crap, and decades later it becomes the most pivotal turning point in your life, then when you're in it, maybe you just don't see what you need to see. And you attach meaning to something that has no meaning, because none of it has meaning. My soul doesn't give meaning to anything. My mind, the part that wants to know, the part that wants security, the one that wants safety, the one that wants comfort, That's the part of me that just wants to know and wants to figure it all out. But at the end of the day, Joanne, we don't know. We don't. Even when we think we know, we don't know. I mean, there's things we know. I know there's gravity. I'm pretty sure that the earth is round. It's not flat. Pretty sure it rotates around the sun. And every 365 and a quarter days, it completes its rotation around the sun. There's things we know. But overall, I have no idea why I'm here. I have no idea why the human race was created or not created. I have no idea whether God created it or it was created from some prehistoric animal that grew into. I have no idea. And in many ways, it really doesn't matter. I think we're here to find peace. Yet we chase stuff. And you asked before about, can you be successful and happy and joyful? Absolutely. When you give up your attachment to all the things you thought you needed in order to be happy. So for me, I've given definitions to happiness and joy. To me, happiness is getting my needs met, and the less needs I have, the easier it is to be happy. So I boiled down my needs to 7, maybe 8. So food, water, shelter, safety, love, air, and health are the needs I have, and I need sex. So those are the 8 things I need. Everything else is a want. People talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I've done enough research to know that Maslow never created a hierarchy of needs. Maslow was talking about different stages of life and a continuum, and I don't think it was about a hierarchy. There were some consultants that wanted to use his work in the corporate world. They created a hierarchy. And the hierarchy stops at self-actualization when Maslow went to self-ascension. So if you think about Maslow linearly versus as a triangle, it starts with survival, food, water, shelter, safety. Those survival things, I think, are our needs. Everything after that, I think, is just a way to connect. So self-esteem and loving belonging. How do we connect to ourselves? How do we connect to others? Self-actualization, how do we connect to our purpose? And then self-ascension is the last one. And honestly, I think that's why we're here, is to ascend. Like we're on this ladder. My brother asked me why I wrote the book and why I continue to write books. If I'm on an ascension ladder and I'm climbing up one rung to the next, every once in a while, I'd like to build a platform so that when I go down, I can stop on a platform versus falling down 5 rungs. So to me, my book is just a platform to say, this is what I learned here. Make it a foundation of my life so that I don't go further down. And my job on the ladder, it doesn't matter where I am. My job is to reach down and pull people up. So as soon as we wake up, I think our job is to help other people wake up. And my teachers are above me on the ascension ladder. So I reach up for guidance and I reach up for help. And in some ways, I'm their teacher. In some ways, they're my teacher, and we're all each other's teachers. We're all mirrors for each other. The reason we get mad and sad and all those things is because there's some wound inside of us that gets rubbed by the action that somebody else takes, and we feel bad. But it's our ego and our identity that feels bad. Our being is just observing and watching. So this whole identity issue is a huge issue. And you asked before about the happiness and the joy and the success. I think they're all tied to identity. And joy and happiness are not tied to identity. And that whole idea of who am I? How was I created? I mean, my name is Larry Kesslin. I was born Lawrence Bruce Kesslin. That's a label. It's not me. And I meet people and they hand me their business card and they say, this is me. I'm like, that's not you. That's a representation of a role you play in one part of your life. You are so much more than you think you are. We are so much more than we think we are.
So for people who feel stuck in survival mode, since that's what you talk about, and I believe that is like a large population of the entire world, right, who feel stuck, just stuck in survival mode, overwork, stress, disconnected, right? So what would you say would be the first couple of baby steps someone can take to move toward a more peaceful and meaningful life?
Simply noticing that they're not happy. The first step in any change is to notice there's a problem. Because if other people tell you there's a problem and you don't believe there's a problem, there's no problem. So the first step is to just acknowledge that you're not happy. Because there's a lot of people that are faking or believe they're happy, and deep down they know they're not. But they're trying to put on a good face, fake it till you make it.
Yep.
It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But the first step is to acknowledge that there's a problem. The second step is to stop looking outside of yourself for any answers and start going inside to yourself to figure out, how was I programmed? So I'll give you my construct. I'm not saying I'm right. I've not done a whole lot of research. I'm not a brain scientist. But here's my take. You're born. You come out this innocent, pure bundle of joy. And then stuff gets put on you. Everything gets put on your parents' beliefs, your grandparents' beliefs, your siblings, your friends, and they start teaching you stuff. And you start learning how to find comfort and how to find safety. And you start to build this identity around yourself. And everything that's unfolding in front of you, so you live halfway around the world from me, everything that's unfolding in front of you is so different than everything that's unfolding in front of me. So I'm 1/8 billionth of human experience in the world today. Now, if you think about my belief system over 62 years is built on everything that's unfolded in front of me, just me, not what's unfolded in front of you, but what's unfolded in front of me and the information I've gathered from what's unfolded in front of others. And my interpretation of what happened. It's not even what happened. It's what I've interpreted what happened. And then I make that my belief system, and I make that my reality, and I make that true. And there's no way in my logical mind, as a relatively smart human, that can think about that and say that what I've experienced in my life, the 1/8 billionth, is reality. Now, I'm not saying it's not my reality, but it's not reality. So if that's my belief system, why do I believe it? Why don't I question it? And our society doesn't want you to question it, because then we'd have too much unrest and people would be doing whatever they want. So the system perpetuates, the marketing perpetuates, go to work, make money so you can buy more stuff, so you think you'll be happier, which you won't, because GDP needs to grow. Gross domestic product needs to grow so that the people with the money can make more money from the investments that they already have. But at the end of the day, the average person, their life doesn't improve. It gets worse. And then they perpetuate it to the next generation. So you asked how you get started. You start by simply noticing. And then you start by looking inside of, how are you wired? What beliefs do you have that are working? And which ones don't work for you? And why are you holding on to them? And then go find some resources, books, people, whatever, that can help you question. A lot of people live in places that are too expensive for them. And I am so blessed. I get to live in San Diego, California. I've traveled to 42 countries, and there is no place in the world I would rather call home than where I live. I don't have to deal with winter. And there's people out there that love winter and they live in cities and they love where they live. But there's a lot of people that live in places they don't want to live. There's a lot of people doing jobs they don't want to do. And they have more choice than they think. Except they're programmed to believe that I have too much risk. I have this, I have that. I don't know. I started my entrepreneurial career when I was still single, didn't have kids, didn't have a family. If I would have waited a decade, it would have been a lot harder. So I understand that. And I have no doubt that it is hard if you're waiting. But we have choices every single moment of every day. And to me, bankruptcy, which I've never experienced, would probably be better than boredom. So why don't people take more risk? But I don't know. We are a very interesting creature. And I say that for a reason, because we are a creature. We are not the dominant species on this planet. We're just the one who controls the most. And I don't understand why we make the decisions we make. I don't understand all the hate. I don't understand all the dissatisfaction. And it's not for me to figure out. I'm not going to try and solve it. What I like to do is find people that are on the journey, that are not quite there, that are on the ladder. I'm not going to reach all the way down to the bottom to pull out the person at the bottom of the ascension ladder. I'm going to find people somewhere close below me, because that's where I can have the greatest impact, is to help people that are starting to wake up, but they haven't really formed an opinion. They want to do good, but they're not sure how. I love working with people that are super successful, that want to do good in the world, and they have no idea how to do it, especially when they have young kids. And they want to demonstrate to those young people how to be good citizens of their community. I love helping people, young families, late 30s into late 40s that have kids between 2 and 6, 7, 8 years old. And we can build a family plan and help them find the purpose that their family holds on to, and that they can work together as a family to teach the young people that money is not there to be absorbed and abused and used. It's energy. And the more we give it to others, it's the most selfish act we can ever do is philanthropy, because it feels so good to give to others, yet we're not taught that. We're taught the exact opposite. Rugged individualism will make you happy. And I can promise you, based on my journey, that that's totally not true at all.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. So, as a parent, earlier you also speak about your own daughter, who is finding her own purpose at 25. Now you speak openly about staying connected to children as well, without controlling them. How can parents listening to this right now support their own adult children, whether it's adult or young kids, without trying to control their path? Like, this is what you're going to do, right? When you grow up, this is the school that you go to, this is the job, things like that.
Listen to them. Don't project your own needs onto your children, because that's what we do. I did it. I'm no saint. I have a 25-year-old daughter and a 24-year-old son, and I love both of them. And I talk to both of them almost every day. And I am blessed. My son is getting married in May, and he's asked me to officiate the wedding. I am so touched, and my heart is so full from the relationship I have with my kids. And the biggest thing is I've stopped trying to fix them. I'm stopping helping them be what I think they need to be, and asking better questions to help them figure out what their own roadmap is. I say all the time, they're my greatest teachers. And I said in the book, the 8 people I've interviewed have been great teachers for me as well. But my 2 children have taught me more about life and love and human connection than anyone. And we create wedges between family members because we believe we know what's right for them.
Yeah.
And if you learn that you know nothing, and you learn that all your ideas are just ideas, and you don't know what's best for anyone, then life becomes a lot easier and relationships become a lot better, because all you do is listen to the other person and listen to understand. Don't listen to speak and react, but listen to truly understand what they're saying and what they want, not what you need from them. That to me is the biggest challenge that parents, right now in the United States, they're calling them lawnmower parents. They're mowing the grass in front of their child so their child never gets in the thick grass. I had a prospect come to me one day, and he's got a traditional business. He says, I want to raise a bunch of money so I can grow my business faster. I'm like, why? I don't want my daughter to struggle the way that I did. And I said, tell me something. Did you learn more when you struggled? Or did you learn more when you didn't struggle? And he looked at me, he couldn't even talk. Like, why are you trying to steal your daughter's struggle so that she can have an easier life, when those are the moments that you learn the most? So we've created a generation of young people, at least here in the United States, that are lacking so much resilience because they've never had hardship. And they don't know how to deal with pain. They don't know how to deal with losing, because everybody gets a trophy. And there's all this stuff about making it easier for our children. To what end? Now, if we made it easier so they could focus purely on meditation and mindfulness and figuring out why they're here, I could buy that. But that's not what we're doing. We're making it easier so we can feel better about our own selves. Yeah. And that's where parenting, I think, has gone sideways. And there's an opportunity to stop. Understand the challenge is we have people that are attached to identity and attached to who they are, trying to guide young people that have no idea who they are. And the people that are attached to their identity are trying to explain to them what they need to do in order to get the identity that their parents have. And their parents are just as disconnected, or if not more, than the children are. And we are stuck in that cycle of wounded. I work with a lot of teen boys through this program called Boys to Men. And you've got wounded men helping wounded boys. Or actually, you've got broken men helping wounded boys.
Well, because yeah, we teach what we know, right? I mean, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing so beautifully. Now, is there anything else that you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you, then let you.
No, the book itself is 8 stories of some amazing people that taught me 5 lessons. And I'll go through the 5 lessons quickly.
Sure.
And that's really what I want people to walk away with, is that we all have lessons to learn. I call it a breadcrumb trail. How do we find the breadcrumbs in our life? So for me, my 5 lessons, my 5 dots are: circumstances not define my joy. If I can meet Armstrong or this other young man, Trinity, also a Ugandan kid I met in 2024 at that conference opportunity, collaboration again. If I can meet people from Uganda, Kenya, Nicaragua, Thailand, you name it, poor countries, quote unquote, and they're happier than anybody I know, there's something wrong. So circumstances not define my joy. Second lesson, my work needs to matter. Not everybody's work needs to matter. I've met people they can do whatever they need to do in order to keep their family happy and healthy and fed, and they're happy. God bless. I don't judge that at all. That's not me. My work needs to matter. So that's my second my second lesson. The third one I think is huge. To me, it's the biggest lesson in the book. 3 challenged athletes, one 100% blind that I did a bike ride from San Francisco to San Diego on a tandem bike with a blind man's 640 miles in 7 days. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's on the U.S. Paralympic judo team right now, world champion jiu-jitsu competitor, finished Kona in 14 hours. I mean, just an amazing athlete. So it's not like I had some blind dummy on the back of a bike that I'm pulling down the mountain. He was helping me a lot. So a woman who lost her arm in a motorcycle accident, who's a world champion archer, Paralympic archer in Rio, and then Joe Delagrave, who competed on the wheelchair rugby team and is now the coach for the 2028 U.S. wheelchair rugby team. And these are all good friends, and I've seen them. That whole chapter is called The Identity Illusion. The more we're attached to our identity, the harder it is to find joy. The fourth lesson is called Perseverance, Persistence, and Patience, is that you got to keep going no matter what. And the last lesson for me is called the Enough Academy. I am privileged. I know that. And when I have enough, what is my responsibility back to others? So how do we give effectively? How do we make a difference? How do we create impact for others? And how do we do that in a beautiful way that feeds our soul? And to me, it's about connecting with others that have shared purpose. Now you put those 5 things together and you get this idea of these are my 5 lessons. The other piece of the book that is critical is the idea of what makes up joy. So joy is knowing what you are, who you are, and why you are. And if you look at the actual joy molecule, there's 4 atoms. Joy is the central atom. The what, the who, and the why circle the central atom. And they're different sizes. And the reason they're different sizes is because the what connection is a lot weaker than the who connection. And the who connection is weaker than the why connection. So the why is the biggest of the 3 orbiting atoms. And most people that I meet connect around the what, which creates a very surface level connection. And if I can help people connect around the who and the why, that's where my joy comes from. I created this deck of cards called Spark Cards. And these cards, it's literally a deck of cards. And 52 questions, actually 54 questions, none of them having to do with anything about what you do, but they're all who you are and why you are. And each suit has a different theme. And each question gets more and more vulnerable the higher you go in the deck in each suit. So the 2 of clubs is the least vulnerable club, and the ace of clubs is the highest vulnerable card. So just questions that are deeper. And I want people to stop asking about what people do and start helping them figure out who they are. And who are your friends? And who are you? And why do you need to know what people do and what car they drive and how big their house is? Really? Is that what we need to know? Don't you want to know why they woke up in the morning? What brings them joy? What are they passionate about? If you can think back to one mentor in your life and the lesson they taught you, what would that be? I mean, there's a million questions we can ask that have nothing to do with the work we do. Yet culturally, we focus on the what. So to me, that's the takeaway. What are your 5 lessons? Figure out where joy comes from. And to me, it comes from knowing those 3 things and walking this planet in peace. Because when you know what you are, who you are, and why you are, nobody can tell you that you're anything other than what you know you are. So nobody can take you off center. You're just doing the work you know you're here to do. I do not go to work to get paid. Somebody told me this recently, and I love it. I get paid to do the work I was put here to do. I know who I am. I know why I wake up in the morning. I have no questions anymore about that. I have lots of questions, but not about me. So who are you? And why do you do the things you do?
Yeah. And and since it's still the beginning of the year, I think it's important to really sit back and ask yourself some of the most important questions in life, right? Who you are, why you are here, what's the work that you're here to do, right? That matters to you and matters to others. Now tell my people where they can get the book, connect with you, buy the cards, or if are you selling those cards as well? Yeah.
Cards are brand new. I literally just had them made up over Thanksgiving, and I got 30 decks. I'm deciding what to do with them, but I'll probably start marketing them. My website is 5-dots.com. Easiest way to find me. My email, larry@kesslin.com. That's my name. And reach out whenever you want to. The book's available on Amazon. It's in Kindle. It's in paperback. I just finished recording the audio, so that'll be out in Audible in the next 30-ish days. So I have an audio file today, but it's not ready for prime time. Got some so I got to fix a couple of those. But other than that, it was so much fun. It's about a 2.5-hour read. It's not a long book, 100 pages. And some of the stories in there, some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And I've been so blessed. They're not the only ones that have stories like that, but they're the ones I decided to feature in the book. I have a good friend I did not include in the book. His name is Jeremy Poinsino. And Jeremy lost his sight at 19 as a college sophomore at San Diego State. And he was a good golfer in high school. And his mom, after he went blind, said, there's this thing called the Blind Golf Association. And Jeremy thought she was full of crap. And he's like yelling at her, why are you trying to tease me? She says, no, really, there is. And he is a 9-time U.S. champion, maybe 10, and 3-time world champion B2 golfer.
Wow.
So it means he has some sight, but he has no central sight. So he's worse than 2,600 to totally blind as B2. And the B1s are 100% blind, which is the guy I rode with. So it's just, I get to meet these amazing people, and my job is to get to tell their stories and then help people that are successful and not happy become happier by giving and being of service to others.
Yeah, I really love the work that you get to do, and thank you so much for teaching us all the lessons, and telling us all the stories on happiness and joy. I'm sure my listeners and even me, it was such a joy to have you on the show, and it's such a blessing to have you here. Thank you so much again for your time, and guys, go follow Larry. Thank him for coming to today. I will put all his links in the show note below, so make sure you grab the book, get the audiobook or paper book, Kindle, and remember to like and subscribe to this podcast so you get more episodes like this every week. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up, the world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into 5 Joy Joanne podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take 5 Joy Joanne _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.